And welcome back to another episode of Do What You Love. I'm Jeff Kirkshin, your host, and thank you so much for joining me. Every single week, I have a chance to sit down and chat with a incredible guest. I mean, honestly, at this point, my gosh, we're soon to wrap up season 1. That's 30 episodes of incredible guests and getting to chat about things that I just don't have the time to chat about on the radio. And I've been blessed to meet some incredible people, and our guest today is one of those people. Very early in my, I guess, over 18 career in working, I had a chance to work for the Frederick Keys in minor league baseball. That's where I met our guest. Tim Murray is in with us today. Tim, hi, brother. How are you?
What's up, man? It's so funny to think, you and I grew up, we're a little different age, but we grew up, I don't know, 15, 20 miles from one another. And now we live 10, 15 miles from one another across the country.
Yeah, we're both in Las Vegas, and that's the crazy part is, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, you moved here summer 2020. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, end of summer 2020, August of 2020, packed up and drove me and the dog across country. And then my family followed about 6, 7 weeks after. And we've been living in Vegas since then. So a little over a year now.
Well, and Tim, you're the host of the Nightcap on VSiN here in Las Vegas. You broadcast out of Circa, which is just like the newest, hottest thing in Las Vegas right now. And I can't wait to talk and go from Moco Boy to Las Vegas, gambling radio host out of a hot casino. I mean, listen, Tim, if I told you, let's say 10 years ago, you would be living in Las Vegas, raising your family here and doing this, what would you say to me?
I would say why? Am I the voice of the Las Vegas, what were they at the time? 51s? 10 years ago, let's see, that would be 2011. So I was, producing the Capitals on the radio side and doing play-by-play. So yeah, and I'm sure we'll dive into it. I mean, as I'm sure many of your viewers have heard from yourself or some of your guests, whether it be your father or others, it's quite the ride. And in sports radio, it has its ups and downs, and we'll dive into it. But yeah, I don't know what I would have said. I was always open to moving. It was never a situation, Jeff, where my wife and I didn't want to move. But we ended up, coming back to Maryland after college. That's where I was from. And we kind of moved all around the state, Baltimore, ended up living outside of Annapolis. But yeah, it's wild to think that this journey has led me here to Las Vegas, and I mean, even sports gambling. I mean, a couple of years ago, I didn't think that this would be the boom that it is, and that I would certainly be a part of it.
Well, I want to get to that boom because it is something that my buddies, like, I've been in the same fantasy football league. Shout out to my guys. We've been in since we were 12, so I'm 28 now, so 16 years in the same league. And now they're just for a while, obviously, we couldn't be gambling on sports, being that we were 12 at the time. But, now we're diving into half the conversations about money lines and cryptocurrency in our group text. And I'm like, what has happened to us?
Yeah.
So for you, Tim, we had a chance to get lunch here in Las Vegas just a couple weeks back, and I was really looking forward to catching up with you and seeing how things were going. But I found it really interesting, and you even mentioned it, that sports betting and gambling even wasn't a big part of your life not too long ago, and now you're co-hosting a show about sports gambling in the gambling capital of the world. So take me through that transition.
Yeah, I mean, it is wild. I would say I really started to get into it when I was hired full time out of minor league baseball and into sports radio. That was 2013, and I was doing DC radio and national radio at that time, and picks segments and stuff like that. And I just started to get infatuated with lines and why they were made that way, and when it seemed obvious, why wouldn't that come home? So that kind of just started it. And then when I got my own show, I was co-hosting with a still good friend of mine, Nick Ashew, in DC. We were doing a night show. I started to do a weekly pick segment. And for college football. And so that was just something to focus on the lines, and still I wasn't fully ingrained in it. And then, we can get into the journey of my, career and all that stuff a little bit later. But as the boom started to happen, I was just kind of in a limbo space. And a good friend of mine, Kevin Sheehan, who is still a very notable personality in the DC area, he was approached about doing a sports gambling show for NBC Sports Radio. This was, I want to say, in 2018. And from my understanding, he, did the demo, and ultimately it just wasn't for him, but he recommended me. And they approached me. I was working at NBC Sports Washington, just kind of behind the scenes doing some off-air stuff, just keeping me busy in a not a great time in my career, to be honest. And they approached me about it, and we hit the ground running. And in 2019, they launched a show called The Daily Line, and that's how it all started. So yeah, I have not honestly been ingrained in it all that much. And I'd say the cool thing about it, Jeff, is a lot of people, a lot of odds makers that I've gotten to know have been very welcoming. It's interesting when you look at Twitter and gambling Twitter. If you see people talking about it, it's not the greatest place, because people get mad when you don't have picks right. But
right.
Oddly enough, like odds makers, people that I've gotten to know, whether it be, odds makers at the Westgate Superbook or, wherever it may be, they're really welcoming, and they want people to understand this stuff, because honestly, at the end of the day, Jeff, the more people know and understand the lingo and why lines are moving and all that stuff, the more at the end of the day people will probably gamble. So that has been great, and I feel like I got in, right as this thing started to launch and take off, and now you see all over the place. There are different networks popping up, and I think it's a great thing. And I wouldn't say it saved sports radio, Jeff, but it certainly helped.
Well, I think you brought up a
yeah.
really good point about, sports radio and the world of sports. I think it all gives us a different perspective on things. And, when I first moved to town, when I first moved to Vegas, I was very minimal gambler, like rarely would gamble. And I grew up with an aunt. My Aunt Cindy, who's the sweetest woman on earth, always used to travel for work, though. She taught me how to play poker, right? So she would always tell me, though, and I don't know if she was kidding or not, because she was going to, Vegas in the 80s and 90s, but I would do something, right? And she would say, they'd shoot you in Vegas for that. And I'm like 10, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then when I come here, I realized, okay, yes, if you walk into a big gambler's room, a high limit place, and you're acting a fool, absolutely. But for the most part, as long as you're not hammered and being annoying, if you do something or ask for advice, people are welcoming to offer, because they understand that, like, that's part of the service of Las Vegas, the service of gambling. So when you talk about, the bookmakers and everybody, it's like kind of the same thing. And I had a chance to do that with a buddy. I just ended up making a friend here my first week. A guy was filling out all the sheets, and I had never put money down on anything. And I just asked him, hey, this is weird. And he goes, yeah, I actually work at a casino in town, and I come here to gamble, and blah, blah, blah. And he sat with me for 30 minutes, because it really is a fascinating thing. And even though my first real-time gambling, really putting money down, was the Super Bowl in 2019, at least at a sporting event, and I missed everything, Tim. I mean, literally, those prop bets are over under 90 seconds for the anthem and all that crap. I missed it all, Tim. I did not win. And I wasn't there. I only put maybe $80 down, but on 10 different props or whatever. Sure. And I had fun doing it, but I didn't get a single one. I mean, I was so off. But it was fun to do. It was really fun to do, honestly.
Yeah, it keeps those competitive juices going. For me, played sports my whole life. Was fortunate enough to play college basketball. So, that competitiveness that you've utilized your whole life, right, Jeff? Whether it be in, Pee Wee football or, middle school baseball, whatever it is, it's gone. So for me, it's kind of a way to keep competitive and wanting to be right. But, I always say this, and everyone, if you ask any person in sports gambling, what's one piece of advice? And they always say bankroll management. That's the go-to saying. It's true, though. I mean, look, if you go into this understanding, Jeff, that you're not going to make money, and maybe you hit a good bet, and you get to, take the wife out to dinner, or, buy beers with your boys. Like, that's great. But at the end of the day, you have to know the other side's coming. And if that's cool with you, then and that's fine. And then to your point about table games, like I'm not a big table games guy. I had a buddy in town uh recently, and we went and played a little blackjack. And to your point, if you're I think with all things, if you kind of approach it recognizing and telling people like, hey, I'm new at this, or don't really know that well, and the dealer's there, and you're not abrasive, or you're not pretending to be a know-it-all, people are more than willing to kind of help you out. So yeah, that's been kind of the neat thing, for me on doing table games, which I do, I don't know, like once every 4 months. But yeah, I mean, that can be a cool, that's kind of a cool aspect to this town.
Well, yeah, thought you hit the nail on the head. If you come with humbleness, you're not going to get,
Right.
rushed off the table for that. And I definitely want to get more into VSiN. I want to get more into what you do here in Vegas, but I want to take it back because I know that we have quite a few baseball fans and quite a few sports fans that listen to the podcast, and you are sports ingrained into your heart. And back to where we met, the Frederick Keys minor league baseball, you were doing play-by-play with our good buddy Adam Pohl. Huge shout out to Adam Pohl. I think, honest to God, kindest hearted man I've ever met in my professional career. Would you have to agree? I mean, just the biggest heart you've ever seen.
Yeah, he's become one of my best friends. He married me, so it's he's kind of an important part of my life forever. But yeah, Adam is he's one of a kind, and he works so hard, and he just loves what he does so much. Hence the name of your podcast here. But that guy loves it so much, and I know he's kind of worked his way a little bit out of minor league baseball. He was in it. He was a lifer, but now he's really focusing on doing play-by-play for basketball at Mount St. Mary's in Maryland as well. But yeah, Adam's the best, and to be honest, there's a lot of people, and I'm sure Jeff, you're the same way. You work your way in your career, and you meet a lot of good people, and obviously Adam kind of giving me a shot in 2010 to be his number 2 broadcaster was a huge thing in the maturation of my career.
Yeah, and it takes that one chance, and you got to take advantage. And I think in the podcast, Tim, what we do a lot is we talk about that adventure, right? You may get that
Mm-hmm.
one shot, but with that peak always comes a valley. And
Oh yeah.
you mentioned about it earlier. We talked about it over lunch that at one point you were sitting as a desk editor, basically, like
Yeah.
not doing what you love, not making a ton of money. Not that that's what it's about, but if you're doing what you love and you're not making a ton of money, you can kind of, at the end of the day, kind of justify what you're doing because you're on the right track. You always say you want to be at the bottom of a ladder you'd rather climb up than halfway up one you don't care to. So tell us about that kind of pitfall in your career. Not saying that it was a bad job, but that it wasn't exactly aiming you towards, and it led you to where you are today.
Yeah, and it's thankfully there's a podcast, so there's no hard outs because it's a bit of a lengthy story, and I'll try to speed it up a bit. But yeah, you mentioned minor league baseball, so that was really my first on-air opportunity, and I figured that was what I wanted to do, Jeff. So I was after college, came back to the Maryland area where I was from, and just kind of blindly emailed our good friend Adam Pohl that you mentioned, and he gave me an opportunity after an interview to be his number 2. Essentially meaning you call about 3 innings of home games, help out with game notes. You're a PR assistant essentially. So I did that for a year, and then was still kind of messing around with the play-by-play world, and work behind the scenes at ESPN 980 in DC as well. So ultimately, I'll fast forward that part. I did about 4 years of play-by-play in minor league baseball. So from 2010 to 2013, the year that we met there with the Frederick Keys. In 2012, had a really neat opportunity. I was the voice of the Aberdeen Ironbirds, which is a shorter season, short season A ball. They're now full season, but I did 76 games for them. I was the main broadcaster, so it was awesome, great opportunity. And then I went back to Frederick as a full-time employee doing sales and play-by-play. And then ultimately in August of 2013, I mentioned I was, working part-time at ESPN 980 in DC. They made a lineup move that opened up a morning shift, and they approached me, and I left the Keys to go work full time for ESPN 980 in Washington D.C. So that was August of 2013, and that was really the first big break of my career. Not to say that working for the Keys wasn't important, or Ironbirds, or producing the Capitals radio broadcast, which I did for the 2011-12 season. But this was, top 10 market, on air every day, pretty decent sized pay bump. And then also with that came an opportunity to be the anchor for a national network called, at the time, Yahoo Sports Radio. It is currently called Sports Map Radio. So I was doing that too. So it was really an incredible time. So that was 2013, and I kept rolling with that same job for about 4 years, and it was phenomenal. Working in my hometown, I was doing a Saturday show, and then an opportunity came later where they expanded the lineup, and I got to do a night show as well. So things were really going well. And this was January 2017, Jeff, where I was at the point in January 2017. I was the studio host for Navy football. I had just finished up my first year doing that, which was unbelievable. I'm a huge college football guy, and to be on Navy's broadcast was a real honor, and it was a lot of fun to do. I was doing a national morning show. I was doing a local evening show. I mean, things couldn't really get better. My wife was pregnant with my son.
Yeah, Tim,
And
I'm going to have to stop you there and say, listen, I think I'm busy, but during these times when your wife is pregnant and you're working all of these gigs how did you have a work-life balance? And I want to continue on the journey, but I want to stop you there because I feel like that's something a lot of people have trouble with. And I woke up one day when I moved in with my then girlfriend, now fiance, and I said, I really got to get my priorities straight here, because I had always said I will move wherever, I will work whenever, and I will do what I want to, make my career. And I kept thinking it'll be great for the future because I'll be able to support a family that I'm not yet having. But then, my priorities shifted, but I still wanted to keep that balance of like, I still got to work hard. So how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. From September, so it was a weird situation. So I was a part of this national morning show called the Steve Zabin Show. Zabe is a very notable personality in the DC area, and I was just, ultimately what happened was, they didn't renew his contract, so they let all of us go. That was in September of, I think it was 2016. Yeah, 2016. And they let us all go. And then about 3 weeks later, their way to right the wrong in their eyes was to hire the 3 sidekicks to do the morning show, cheaper rate, so we couldn't turn it down. So in October of 2016, excuse me. Yeah, I was doing a morning show. I would come home, I'd walk the dog. By the way, I lived like 50 minutes away from the studio. And then, would turn right around and do afternoon updates, and then do an evening show. So it was a lot going on. And my wife and I had kind of come to the conclusion that, I was going to have to get rid of one of those jobs. Well, before my son was born, the decision was made for me. So in January of 2017, interestingly enough, on Inauguration Day, I was pulled into the office of ESPN 980 and told I was being laid off. So it was stunning. It was really blindsided situation, Jeff, because I knew what I made in comparison to others, and I just felt like I was surprised that this was the way that they were going. So that was a surprise. But there was one situation, one thing that hit me in my career, that to be honest, I owe a lot to it, to kind of keep me going and believing, because Jeff, I'm sure you've had these moments too where you always want to know, am I good at this? Like, yeah, my parents think I'm good, or my friends think I'm good, but like, am I actually good?
I think that is a question I ask all the time. I got like 10 episodes into this podcast, and I literally thought to myself, is this even good? Like, do I even care? What was that moment for you?
So So I was laid off was that January 2017. So I still was doing the morning show, and then I was doing Navy football as well. So we were keeping things together. My son was born in the summer of 2017, July of 2017, and then that fall, I was poking around trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I picked up some side work in Norfolk, Virginia, where I just did it remotely. Um, but I reached out, and I always, like you do, I have friends in the industry, and I reached out to one of them, who was a good friend of mine, was in the Carolina League, and now he's actually the voice of the Reds on television. His name's John Sadak, and he said, "Hey, you need to email Howie Deneroff. Howie Deneroff runs Westwood One Sports." And I'm like, there's no way he's going to listen to my stuff, but I'll send it in anyways, because the Olympics were coming up, Jeff, in the winter of 2018. And I knew that being in radio, that Westwood One, in addition to doing like play-by-play and a host, a show, they do these updates around the clock for all their affiliates. So I was like, that'd be great. I could go up to New York for like 3 days. I'll do one of those. So I reached out to Howie Deneroff. We had a conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, I think you might make some sense. You come up here for a couple of days." Like, great. And then I find out that his kind of main number two, one of the EPs there at Westwood One, is a guy named Mike Eby, and he lived in the DC area. So I reached out to him, and he said, "Hey, why don't we grab a cup of coffee?" So this is October of 2017. The Olympics are in February. So we have a conversation. And honestly, little did I know at that time, Jeff, that it was kind of a de facto interview. And a week later, they had someone drop out of their coverage of the Olympics. And he said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to the Olympics?" So my son at the time was like, what was he, 3 or 4 months old. So,
Wow.
That was tough. But as soon as I said something to my wife, she said, "You've got to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what you got to do." And, for anyone who's sports fan or a radio geek like the two of us, I mean, Westwood One on the sports side is kind of the thing, man. That's the best of the best. Like I board opt Westwood One coverage forever, and to get an opportunity to be a part of their broadcast was gratifying, and really like, okay, this is going to keep me going along. So I went over to Pyeongchang, was a part of their broadcast team. And that to me, Jeff, kept me going, because shortly thereafter, in the summer of 2018, the morning show that I had been doing, they let me go. So now I didn't have any shows. I still had Navy football. I had started doing some updates on a very part-time basis at a radio station in town. But I was really wondering, I'm like, what's next? Is this for me? And that kind of that thought of be like, okay, if I was good enough to go to the Olympics with Westwood One, and then that summer they asked me to go to the PGA Championship to be part of their coverage there, I think I'm good enough. I don't stink. So that's what's kind of kept me going. And then, as we alluded to in the beginning of the podcast, I needed to just make some money. So I was writing and doing editing behind the scenes for NBC Sports Washington. And then that's when I got approached with the opportunity to try out for the gambling show. And, as they say, the rest is history. So very, very fortunate, to just kind of keep plugging along. And then, the VSiN thing, once again, the pandemic hit, the show folded up at NBC Sports, which was stunning. I mean, they built us a set. We were on television in 4 major markets. We were on in DC, Chicago, Philadelphia, and the Bay Area. And I felt like, Jeff, all right, we're good, man. And then the pandemic hit, and they kind of just froze everything and went a different direction. And fortunately for me, the work that I had done to that point had caught enough attention with folks like at VSiN, and they came after me, and here we are.
Well, Tim, I think one of my most hated sayings in radio, in broadcast, but I think it's just true, is you've never worked in radio until you've been fired. They always say that, and it like bothers the living hell out of me, because I'm such an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Cleveland, I was hosting the show. I was the #1 microphone. And then after about a year and a half, they said, okay, we want to kind of change things. Jeff, we want to move you. We want to keep you on the show, but we kind of want to move you to a secondary funny guy role and bring in another guy to host the show, who is a friend of mine who is working for a different radio station that my company owned. But, it wasn't my buddy who was the one making this decision, so I wasn't mad at him. I was happy for him and his opportunity, but it hurt. It really hurt. And it brought me to a dark place for like a week or two. And it was a difficult place. Game 7 of the World Series was like Sunday, and it was Cleveland, Chicago, and I was at the game. And then that Monday, they made me aware that Friday would be my last day with this morning show team that I'd work with, and that one guy was going to go take another person's spot. They're going to bring somebody into my spot and move me around. And then the next day was the 2016 presidential election. And not that, it was just a crazy time in our lives. And I don't like to say as much as get fired to learn, but you have to have the peaks and the valleys in order to understand, because you look at Tim Murray now, right? And what he's doing and the success he's having and the fun you're having with what you're doing. But think about all that it's taken to get you to where you are right now. My dad still deals with people messaging him, hey, Tim, I'm a 12th grader. I want to be Tim Kirkshin one day, or I'm a broadcast. And like, my dad worked for 2 newspapers that folded in the same year. He got a job at a newspaper, it folded. 6 months later, he got another job at a newspaper, and it folded. And so you look at like the Tim Kirkshins, and you say, oh, he must, yeah, look at him. He's got all of it in the world.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, no, it hasn't been easy. It's been difficult. We all have our trials and tribulations, but I think that it makes you learn from those situations. Is there something you've taken with you? And we have to talk about your God blessing of a wife for dealing with, because my fiance deals with it too. All of the pressure of being the wife of a broadcaster is not an easy one. But is there something you've taken with you, a nugget, a saying that you've like, kind of a mantra you remind yourself to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and I don't know if this is the #1 thing, but just you're kind of always networking, and you just never know what connection is going to bring it home for you. And and not saying it disingenuously like that. There's a lot of people out there, and you know them, and I'm sure your viewers know them too, who only talk to the people who think this person can get me somewhere one day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that guy's the #2 broadcaster. I don't need to talk to him. Talk to everyone. I mean, because you just never know. I mean, it was so great this past weekend. My buddy was in town. I mean, we crossed paths in the Carolina League in 2013. He was the voice of the Winston-Salem Dash, and now he's the voice of Michigan. Am I getting a job through him? No, but we're friends, and we hung out together, and it was great. My roommate from Pyeongchang was here calling the Raiders-Chiefs game, and then was back in town calling the Arizona basketball game at T-Mobile. So it's just great to build those relationships. And then, when something happens, they're kind of looking out for you. And I didn't know who or what that would ultimately be. But, when I got this big break with NBC, which I thought was going to be, the break, it was a lot of different pieces that kind of came together. I mentioned Kevin Sheehan. He had tried out for it. I worked with him at ESPN 980. I had done work with Westwood One, obviously. That's who I ended up getting hired by. So they knew who I was. And then, just being in the DC area and working behind the scenes at NBC Sports Washington, it was like this perfect storm of like, oh yeah, we know who Tim Murray is. Oh yeah, I think we should give him an opportunity. So it just kind of all came together, fortunately. So you just, you never know who is going to end up being that piece that, that they help you. And then, give it back, man. Like, I'm just a big believer of, of karma. And, a buddy of mine in the same industry got laid off a couple months ago. And I immediately reached out to him. I'm like, hey man, what can I do? I'm like, here's this person, email them. Here's this person, email them. And he's really talented. And I'm happy that I was able to get him in front of some people that I know, and it led to him getting a new job. And I'm not saying I'm the reason he got that new job. He got the job because he's really talented, but he went on hard times, and I had been there before. And fortunately, I was able to help him just a little bit to talk to the right people and recommend him. And, so I just think what goes around comes around. I know it's really cliche, but if, I think that's the biggest thing, man, is just at the end of the day, I'm not a big person. I'm not a super faith based person, but I'm a believer of karma, and good things happen to good people, and all of that. So, but I think the biggest thing to answer your question is just always be networking, man. And if the worst case scenario is, Jeff, you make a new friend, well, that's a pretty good worst case scenario, right? So,
Right.
but don't be disingenuous. Don't be, oh, that person is beneath me right now. I don't need to worry about them. Just, you never know. Have no idea who ultimately is going to lead to that. I mentioned my friend John Sadak. Well, him kind of giving me Howie Deneroff's email or whatever it was, and it leading to this. So it's just, you never know how it all works out at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that would be the biggest piece of advice, or
Yeah, I think that, Tim, I think that's great advice, because a lot of the times I even see, I went to Syracuse, so we have an
yeah,
enormous amount of alumni who are much older than me that are extremely successful. But I'm 28, class of 2015. I'm seeing so many alumni who are my age or even younger who are doing huge things. And I think it speaks volumes to how you treat your peers as much as to how you treat the people you want to be one day. I mean, obviously, if you have a chance to talk to some of the greats in broadcasting, you got to, put your best foot forward and be there and help out. But a great example, my college radio station, WJPZ in Syracuse, my executive producer, so my EP, or my AP, excuse me, assistant producer, underneath me was a freshman. I was a senior. I hired her because I was like, she's smart, she's quick, and she follows directions well. And I told her in her second week, she was like, oh, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm having so much fun. This is great. I said, I hired you because I think one day you're going to hire me. And now she's 25, I would assume. And she is a television producer in the number one market in the country, New York City, producing for NBC. National producer at 25. And I'm not saying
yeah,
like, here I am, like predicting the future and everything, but you just know and you see it. And I joked about you're going to hire me one day, and that's not why. She's a very good friend of mine. She'll be at my wedding. I'm so excited to see her again. She basically is family to me. But it just goes to show that it's not only those people above you, but it could be somebody right next to you, or even somebody who's younger than you, that you got to look out for, and you got to take care of the people around you, because those connections are so important. And, look at us. Tim, you moved here last summer. You hit me up when you were moving here. I made some suggestions. You ended up moving in an absolutely perfect area of Las Vegas for you and your family. And then pandemic, and we were just like, all right. I kept saying, I'll just wait it out before I hit him up. I know he's got a young son. I don't really want to mess around with this. And then I was like, I'm done. I just let's get together. And now here we are. And now you're joining the podcast. I can't wait to come see your setup at the Circa. That is absurd, my friend. I've seen photos. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. The VSiN network started 4+ years ago, and it started out of the South Point in Las Vegas, and still are there. But Derek Stevens, who owns Circa, Golden Gate, the D down on Fremont Street, the story goes he just was interested in the network, and bought in a piece of it way back when. And then when they built the Circa, the plans, the blueprints were a VSiN studio, and it overlooks the sports book. You can't miss it, and it's really remarkable to think that that's where I get to go every day to work, and to talk about sports gambling. So it is truly remarkable, and kind of humbling sometimes to think like, hey, here I am inside the world's largest sports book doing a show.
It is so cool. It is so neat. Before I let you go, Tim, describe your incredible wife with one word, because I need to take that to my fiance so she continues to stay strong when it comes to soon to be marrying a broadcaster, and you two have been together for quite some time. How would you describe her resilience?
Oh man, I was gonna say tough, I don't know if tough's the right word. I'm trying to think.
Tim, I can just imagine right now. She comes home. It's just you at the house right now. She comes, well, yeah, I described you as tough. She said, tough?
Well, you know,
But I get it in
there's
the
a lot of,
resilience sense. In the
yeah, I'm
resilience
thinking
sense,
like
absolutely.
flexible,
Yeah.
understanding.
Like, you and
You know,
I
those,
get it. But if your Emily's anything like my Emily, it would be like,
yeah,
that's what you came up with? Like, no, if you heard the whole conversation, you would get it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, the darkest of times was probably the summer of from about July 18 to about December of 19, maybe November of 19. Those were really tough, and I give her a ton of credit, man. I do, because we had a 1 year old. She was obviously working full time as a school psychologist in Maryland, and I was just not in a great place. I was, I was moody and all of that, because I kind of thought the end of the road was near. And for her to stick it out, and for her to kind of believe in me and try, because she got tired of me talking about career stuff, and I could definitely see that. But I'm so happy that it's worked out the way that it has, because look, she felt pressure towards the end, prior to me getting that job at NBC. Was She felt pressure of being, kind of the steady force, right? The insurance was through her, the regular paychecks, and her personally, it was a taxing job, and so to come here was, I feel like, a little bit of relief, and kind of maybe a little bit of a reset too. But yeah, I mean, to think back, I was on the road, with minor league baseball for a couple of years. That was really hard, and she stuck it out there. So it's she's been on the ride with me. So yeah, I resilient, understanding, those types of ways are how I kind of define who my wife is.
Well, a cheers to the ladies in our life who let us live the dream and do what we love every day. Cheers to that. Tim Murray, everybody, you can give him a follow right now at one Tim Murray, and you can also check him out, part of VSiN. And we didn't even get to the sports with Bob and Brian. I mean, what a great gig you have with those guys. I mean, that is so fun. I mean, that's out of Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, another fun little aspect that things just kind of, every once in a while, you get lucky at the right time. And I mentioned Steve Zabin. He had been the morning. So long story short, there's a morning show in Milwaukee called The Bob and Brian Show on 102.9 The Hog. They've been doing it for, I think, like 34 years now. Number one rated show in Milwaukee, and they have a sports segment each and every day where they hire out a sports guy, and he becomes part of their fold. Every day you do sports for about 40 minutes, and it's not always sports. It's kind of just, banter and as you know, I mean, on a radio show. And they had Zabe do it for about 20 some odd years, and then he left to go start his own radio show in the city of Milwaukee. And that led the void. And, through the morning show that I had done with him, there was some crossover of people that we knew. And one of those guys recommended me for the job. I tried out, did it one day. They asked me to come back the next day, and then we were on, and it was game on. So I've been doing that for over 3 years, just signed a new extension there. And man, people of Milwaukee are wonderful. I've been out to Milwaukee a couple times. It's a fantastic city. And so it's just, it's really unique, man. And I tell you what, I mean, once you're kind of part of that family, it's remarkable. I know I've used that word a bunch now, but they come outside the VSiN studios. They're saying hi. Like, I mean, Milwaukee people get after it, man. They have a fun time. So they like to come to Vegas, and it's been really cool to kind of see all these people come up and talk about the morning show, and it's really neat. So yeah, 3 years going, and then hopefully many, many more years to come. And I just come down to this spot, at 6 a.m. Every morning, and fire it up and get the day going.
Tim Murray, everybody. Tim, I could do 3 hours with you on the podcast. We'll have to do our next podcast in person with some whiskeys or wine or whatever you want to drink, and we'll have a great time together. Good luck, VSiN and the Hog. You're just crushing it, and I appreciate you giving me some time for Do What You Love today. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it, man.